Here's your Forbes Daily Briefing for Monday, March 11th. Today on Forbes, this Bill Gates-backed startup is trying to fix steel's horrible environmental impact. Donald Sadoway sees steel as a climate crisis of its own and a conundrum. He said, quote, "If steel were a country, it would be the third largest polluter." Steel's manufacture is responsible for around 8% of global CO2 emissions, primarily because making it usually involves burning vast amounts of coal. But steel is also a material that's crucial to modern life. It's in cars and buildings, kitchen appliances and medical equipment, and your kids' braces. Nearly 2 billion tons of it are produced worldwide each year, worth $1.4 trillion, and they emit nearly twice that amount in CO2. We're addicted to steel in a way that's unlikely to change anytime soon. Forecasts suggest the market could grow 3.8% annually and reach $1.9 trillion by 2027. That makes decarbonizing it core to the global effort to prevent the coming climate catastrophe. Sadoway, a retired MIT professor and co-founder of Boston Metal, thinks he's found a way to do that by essentially shooting electricity into iron ore rather than splitting it with a chemical reaction in a blast furnace. No coal is needed. Boston Metal's key innovation is an anode, essentially a metal rod that conducts electricity, that can tolerate the high temperatures needed to liquefy iron. Boston Metal CEO Tadeu Carneiro told Forbes, quote, "It solves a big problem, and it revolutionizes an industry that has been based on the same equation for millennia." Driven by rising European penalties on emissions and American incentives in the Inflation Reduction Act, steel producers, startups, and investors alike are looking for ways to produce steels that are less harmful to the environment, but don't cost a pile more. Boston Metal's electrolysis is one way of doing that. Other companies have developed a green hydrogen-based process. Of the variety of green steel efforts, John Gordon, Deputy Director of the Green Steel Program at nonprofit CalStart, said, quote, "We have the technology to revolutionize the steel industry. Now it is just an implementation problem." It also requires a major shift in thinking for an ancient industry. The notoriously dirty steel manufacturing process hasn't changed much in 1,000 years. Since 1950, global steel production has risen from 189 million tons a year to nearly 2 billion. CO2 emissions have soared in tandem to roughly 4 billion tons a year today, roughly 4 times that of the aviation industry. With a goal of lowering harmful greenhouse gases in a vast industry, Boston Metal has raised more than $350 million from investors that include steel giant ArcelorMittal and Bill Gates' Breakthrough Energy Ventures at a recent valuation of $860 million, according to venture capital database PitchBook. Boston Metal already has a pilot plant at its headquarters in Woburn, Massachusetts, just north of Boston. And this past week, it opened a full-scale factory in Brazil that will produce pricey low-carbon iron alloys with cheaper off-the-shelf anodes. The idea is to quickly establish a solid source of revenue that will give the company a runway to commercialize its green steel. Carneiro expects the Brazilian operation to reach $400 million in revenue with $100 million in operating profit by 2026, the same year it hopes to be commercial with its green steel. Boston Metal's process, which uses an electricity-conducting, molten metal-proof anode to liquefy iron ore, separating the pure metal without harmful byproducts, allows factories to create carbon-free steel as long as they use a clean energy source, such as hydroelectric power. It also can create steel from lower-grade ores rather than relying on scarce high-grade ones. That's an important advantage in terms of both cost and availability compared to other methods of making green steel, according to the company. Just how much all this will cost relative to traditional steelmaking is the big unknown here. Steel is a commodity industry where every penny of cost counts, and building new steel plants costs a fortune. The cost should be on par with traditional steelmaking once plants are producing between 1 million and 2 million tons a year, as long as electricity prices are around $30 per megawatt hour. This, according to the company's calculations. For full coverage, check out Amy Feldman's piece on Forbes.com. This is Kieran Meadows from Forbes. Thanks for tuning in.